and introduce our speaker, who is Mike Cooney. And Mike is the 32nd Montana Lieutenant Governor. And he has been there since 2016. I've known Mike since 1980 when he was the staff of Senator Baucus, and that was after the 77 and 79 legislature, which he served in, and then he was retired or got a chance to work full-time or stay out of politics for a while and working for Senator Baucus. So he worked for him until 1988, where he became Secretary of State. And kind of unheard of, but he was a three-term Secretary of State, because when he was elected in 88, the term limit had not come through. So Mike was able to serve 3 terms as Secretary of State. And he's had a storied past since then. He's worked in a number of positions. Was over at Labor. He came in when the Historical Society kind of had some problems and straightened that out. He was, I think Mike told me he was supposed to go in for 3 months, and was 10 months later he yielded to the current director. He then, in between, went to the Montana State Senate, where we all knew him, and he served in the 2003, 5, 7, and 9 sessions with our Executive Director, Bob Story, and they were spinning some Senate stories today, and it's nice for the two of them to get back together and talk about the good old days, because I think they are good and old and over. So Mike worked, was over at Labor, and was called by Governor Bullock to come in and be the Lieutenant Governor, and he is has a couple more years to go on that, and who knows what happens after that. Mike's got 3 grown adult children, and I asked how many in the state, and he said all 3, which is quite a good deal. None for Butte, much to the chagrin of the family, but he has some family still over in Butte, a native of Butte, and he's Glen Helen and Bozeman. So without further ado, I want to introduce a friend of mine, Lieutenant Governor Mike.
To be here. It's great to be here with your Executive Director, Mr. President. He still makes me call him Mr. President. It's great to be, when Bob would stand up on the Senate floor, if you were carrying a bill, you shook. You did not want Bob Story to get up and start questioning you. Bruce, am I right? I mean, you didn't want to do that. And so, but he's always a gentleman. He always did a great job in the Senate, and you're very fortunate to have him. He did not pay me to say that. So anyway, thank you very much, Bob, for extending the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you all today. As we head into the 2019 legislative session, both Governor Bullock and I are doing so reflecting on what we've been able to accomplish together over the last few years and the lessons learned as we move forward. We're pleased with the progress Montana has made the past few legislative sessions. From fixing our pension system without raising taxes, making record investments in our education system, including the first ever investment in publicly funded, high-quality early childhood education, and freezing tuition for 4 years. Shining light on our elections through the Bipartisan Disclose Act. Implementing comprehensive criminal justice reform. Lowering taxes on every small business in Montana. Passing an earned income tax credit to help middle-class families, and bringing Democrats and Republicans together to pass a unique approach to Medicaid expansion that has become a model for states all across the country. So, some of this good work we've accomplished is reflected in our economy. In the last 5 years, we've added over 30,000 jobs and over 6,300 new businesses have been created. Our unemployment rate is currently at the lowest it's been in over a decade. In the past 5 years, we've added $3.1 billion in real GDP, growing our economy by over 8%. Annual wages are increasing, and Montana's middle-class households grew more than any other state in the nation between 2013 and 2016. Montana's manufacturing sector had the third fastest GDP growth among states over the last 5 years, and we continue to see growth in other diverse industries such as healthcare, construction, and in financial activities. It's because of these successes that we head into this legislative session optimistic. We've been able to demonstrate that regardless of political party, we can still set an example in Montana of how government is supposed to work, and that we can make smart investments that grow our economy and improve livelihoods of Montana's families. Yet, it's equally important to recognize that the consequences of last session and the resulting special session must serve as lessons learned, not lessons repeated. It was a little over a year ago that lawmakers were in the hallways of the state capitol for the special session. In fact, I really think we need to find another title. We should not call those special sessions. Just a thought, okay? Extremely difficult decisions were made, and there's no doubt that the aftermath resulted in harmful and real-life consequences for Montanans all across the state. In September, Governor Bullock announced the restoration of some, but not all, of the cuts to services made during the regular and special sessions. Although it wasn't everything we had hoped to restore, we're pleased that our budget is now back on track. Revenue estimates between the governor's office and the legislative fiscal division are currently pretty close on the mark to one another. And they both take into account strong growth that we anticipate to see over the next couple of years. But let's not take this situation for granted. Like I said, let it be lessons learned, not lessons repeated. In order to build a budget and set priorities that reflect our values as Montanans, and that makes smart investments in growing our economy and strengthening working families, we need to ensure that our budget stays on track. That's why we proposed a budget based on 3 guiding principles. The state budget should have a $300 million reserve on June 30th, 2021. The state budget should be structurally balanced, not spending more than we project to take in. And our state should make fiscally prudent and sustainable investments that benefit Montanans for generations to come. Now let me be clear on the $300 million reserve. Some of our Republican friends, our legislators in the session, are currently saying we only need to keep $200 million in the bank. But we know from last session and the resulting special session the consequences of only keeping that much money in our reserve for a rainy day. In fact, we only left $200 million last go-around. Then we were hit with a record fire season, and our ending fund balance fell below the legal operating amount. We not only have proof that we need to stick as close to $300 million in our reserves as we can, but it also just makes good fiscal policy sense. And we expect legislators on both sides of the aisle to work with us on this. And really, our guiding principles at their core shouldn't be a partisan issue. Both sides of the aisle can and do agree on these points. To keep our rainy day reserves where they need to be while making the investment Montanans expect, we need to bring in new revenues and update our tax system. Governor Bullock has proposed a responsible mix of revenue streams that are fair and that reflect Montana's changing economy, including increasing the revenue the state takes in from accommodations, rental car, investment licenses, tobacco products, and hard liquor. I'd specifically like to point to the investment license fee, which hasn't been updated since 1982. Of the 108,545 professionals registered to do business in Montana, Only 2,191 of those actually live in Montana. We're simply asking to update the fee to do business in Montana from $50 to $100, and for firms from $200 to $400. A simple and fair update like this to our revenue system would bring in over $12 million over the biennium. The investment license fee and other revenue proposals will foster new opportunities for growth and allow us to capitalize on our strong and growing economy. It's time for us to invest in middle-class families in our state's infrastructure and the essential core services Montanans deserve. Beyond the three budget priorities Governor Bullock has outlined, he's also prioritized areas of the budget that we know will impact for the better Montanans long after we have completed our time in public service. Last session, lawmakers recognized that investing in our earliest learners will build the foundation of our state's economy for generations to come. We made the state's first ever investment in publicly funded preschool, and we've already found from the first year of the STARS preschool pilot program that 93% of preschoolers who participated were ready for kindergarten at the end of the school year. We know that children who take part in early childhood education are less likely to repeat a grade and are more likely to graduate from high school. We know that children who take part in early childhood education are less likely to need remediation or special education, and they're less likely to abuse drugs and end up in jail. We know that children who take part in early childhood education are more likely to reach at grade level, earn more money as adults, and contribute back to the state's economy. We know that this investment works. For every $1 we invest in preschool, it results in $7 in savings to communities down the road. And that's why Governor Bullock is proposing to expand his investment in public funded preschool with $30 million over the biennium. In our university system, Governor Bullock is proposing to once again freeze college tuition. We did this in 2013 and 2015, and it's part of what has kept Montana the fourth most affordable state for college tuition in the nation. And it's prevented what really is effectively a tax increase on 40,000 students and their families. And he's proposing that Montana finally join every other state in the country by offering state-funded financial aid for students seeking 2- and 4-year degrees, including returning adult learners. We also know that sustainable investments in critical infrastructures across our state in rural and urban communities is essential to our continued economic growth. And if we want to keep creating and maintaining good-paying jobs here in Big Sky Country, we need to pass an infrastructure package. Governor Bullock is proposing a $290 million investment in infrastructure financed through a responsible mix of cash and bonds, with a majority of that investment provided to projects in local communities all throughout the state. This proposal includes drinking water and wastewater systems, sewers, solid waste disposal, bridges, and an increase in broadband investment. Additionally, he's proposing a $44 million grant program for Montana's natural resource communities, largely in eastern and northern Montana, that are impacted by fossil fuel development. And the last significant area of investment that I want to touch on today is healthcare. 3 years ago, Democrats and Republicans came together to expand Medicaid through the Montana Health Act. Our unique bipartisan approach to provide health care to nearly 100,000 Montanans reduced the uninsured rate in Montana from a staggering 20% to 7%. And we've seen greater increases in workforce participation among Medicaid enrollees than any state in the country. It threw a lifeline to our rural hospitals. Hospitals in the state that did not expand, hospital in states that did not expand Medicaid have been closing 6 times faster than those that did. In Montana, since we expanded Medicaid, we haven't lost one hospital in our entire state. Uncompensated care costs have dropped by nearly 50%. Montana cannot afford to lose all that progress. That's why Governor Bullock is proposing to fully fund Medicaid expansion in his budget. At stake is health care for our friends, neighbors, and families. At stake are thousands of jobs created and hundreds of millions of new dollars that come into our state because of Medicaid. Because let's be realistic, if we don't keep Medicaid expanded, it's not like we're going to get a check back from the federal government. That money's just going to go to some other state to take care of their health care needs. We need to keep those investments here for our economy, for our rural hospitals, for our veterans who have served our state and nation, and for the thousands of others who cannot afford to be one emergency room visit away from losing their home. So just as we have in every session, we're willing to work with Republicans and Democrats to ensure that the budget we pass is fiscally responsible and that it builds upon the progress we've made in our state. We have an opportunity, we have a great opportunity to build a budget that truly reflects the priorities of Montanans, of our economy, and of our future. We're ready to roll up our sleeves and get to work, and we certainly look forward to all of you joining us as we ensure Montana continues down this great path. So thank you again very much for having me come today and to visit with you, and we look forward to working with you in the months ahead. Thank you so very much.
Lieutenant Governor has agreed to take a few questions. We're running a little ahead of schedule, and so if you have some questions, and I think Bob can grab a mic and bark them out pretty loud. Go ahead and ask Mike some questions. They can be easy ones, softballs.
Easy softballs.
Questions? Budget.
Wow. I'll have to ask you some questions. Here's one. Mary Ann, my legislator. How are you?
One of my favorite constituents. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to attend this conference. It's so helpful. So my question is sort of a wonky tax question. The fees, you mentioned the investment fees. Some of the fees we have in government, are most of them indexed to inflation? And if not, should they be?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the short answer is I would be willing to bet, and this is just, I haven't done a lot of research, I'd be willing to bet that most of our fees are not indexed to inflation, anything like that. They're just set in statute, or there's some sort of at the whim of a board or something like that. This particular fee on the financial services is just in statute. And so would it make sense to have something that would, you know, tie into inflation or what have you? I don't know. I mean, it may be a good way of kind of keeping up with what's happening in the economy. On the other hand, I think sometimes, I mean, people might argue that it's good to have something solid, that people know this is what it's going to cost me in order to do business in the state of Montana. But it would certainly be worth, you know, maybe looking at that and seeing if there are other states that may tie it to some factor, and see if it'd be something that we could look at. I hadn't thought of that, Mary Ann, but yeah. But this would what we're trying to do here would just change the statute and just raise the fee statutorily.
Good answer. I didn't mean to throw you a couple questions.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll get you next time you knock on my door.
Further questions?
Wow.
All right.
Quiet group.
Tell you what, still
I'm telling you, thank you. Thank you all very much. You know, we will be very busy as we prepare for the legislative session, and as we get into the legislative session, we look forward to seeing you all. And if there's anything we can do, please let us know. Thank you.
And Mike, on behalf of the taxpayers, we'd like to present you this token of our appreciation for you
Thank you.
showing up.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.